Commander Daniel Torres walked through the corridors of the Galactic Council station. His boots made hard sounds on the metal floor. Around him, alien beings moved through their day. Some had more than 2 arms. Some had eyes that glowed with their own light. Most of them did not look at him. He had been chosen to speak for all of humanity. Billions of people from Earth and the colonies were counting on him. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on his shoulders. Daniel was not a man who felt fear easily, but today his hands were not completely steady. The chamber doors opened before him. The space inside was massive. The ceiling stretched up so far that it seemed to touch the sky itself. The walls were made of something that looked like crystal mixed with glass. Light from 7 different star systems filtered through them, creating colors that had no names on Earth. The council members sat on raised platforms. Each one represented a different species. The Xylthians occupied the highest seats. They had been the first to reach the stars. They had built empires before humanity even learned to write. They wore clothing that seemed to shift colors in the light, and their faces were sharp and cold. The Vextori sat to the left. They were traders and business people. Their skin had patterns that moved like living things. They were interested in everything, including humans, but only if humans could offer something valuable. The Tori were warriors. They had 4 arms and bodies built for combat. Their eyes were dark and focused. They respected strength above all other things. The Kethri barely showed themselves. They lived in ships that traveled between the stars. Most councils barely let them in the door. But even the Xylthians respected them enough to give them a seat. Daniel walked to the center of the chamber. His voice did not shake when he spoke. I am Commander Daniel Torres of Earth. I represent the human species. We have come to request protection status from the Galactic Council. The Xylthian elder did not move. His name was Vakesh, and he had lived for 300 years. He had seen thousands of young species come and go. He had watched some grow strong and some disappear completely. Vakesh turned his sharp face toward Daniel. When he spoke, his words came through a translation device. The device made his voice sound like grinding metal. The human species. We have studied your world. We have read your history. Your people have only just discovered how to reach your nearest star. You kill each other regularly over resources and beliefs. You are not ready for the larger galaxy. Daniel had expected this. He had prepared for it. We may be young, he said, but we are willing to learn. We want to join the community of planets and species. We want peace. A Vextori with orange skin and patterns like silver lightning stood up. Her name was Colthan. She had traded with many young species before. She had made credits from all of them. The question is not whether you want peace. The question is whether you have anything we want. Do you have resources? Do you have technology? Do you have anything worth the effort of protecting? Daniel had studied this carefully before coming to the council. Earth has water. We have minerals. We have agricultural capacity. And we have people who are smart and willing to work hard. We have already begun building colonies on 17 different worlds. We would be better partners than problem children asking for help. Vakesh made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are children who cannot even protect your own colonies. We received a report last week. Raiders attacked a human settlement. You sent no ships to help them. You had no military to send. The settlement was destroyed. 73 of your people died. The words hit Daniel like a physical blow. He knew this already. He had read the reports. He had felt the weight of those deaths. But hearing it said out loud in this chamber made it worse. 73 humans. 73 lives that meant nothing to the being sitting before him. We are learning, Daniel said. His voice was harder now. We will build our military. We will protect ourselves. The Tory warrior named Cathalan leaned forward. His forearms crossed against his chest. You have no military technology. You have no combat experience. You would be a burden on the council. You would need protection that cost us resources. The silence in the chamber grew heavy. Daniel could feel them deciding his species' fate. Their decision would echo across human colonies and back to Earth. It would tell billions of people whether they were welcome in this galaxy or whether they should stay on their little world and accept their place as unimportant. Rakesh raised his hand. The chamber became completely quiet. The human species will be granted level 7 protection status, the lowest tier. We will recognize your claim to your 17 colonies. We will not invade your space, but you will receive no military aid. You will receive no technology. You will receive no council resources. You will protect yourselves or you will fall. This is the decision of the Galactic Council. The judgment was final. The council chambers had walls that could not be appealed through. Once a decision was made, it stayed made. Rakesh looked away from Daniel. The other council members did the same. They had already moved on to other matters in their minds. Daniel turned and walked from the chamber. His face showed no emotion, but inside he was thinking hard. The council had made a choice. They had looked at humanity and decided they were not worth helping. They had looked at the death of those 73 colonists and seen nothing but weakness. He arrived back at the human quarters of the station late that night. Captain Lisa Mitchell was waiting for him. She had been a fighter pilot in Earth's military. She had volunteered to come with Daniel as the military advisor. How bad? She asked when she saw his face. Level 7, Daniel said. The lowest possible rating. We get no help. No technology. No aid of any kind. Lisa sat down slowly. She had known this was possible. They had discussed it before coming. But possible and real were different things. So they will let us be destroyed. Unless we prove we are worth something, Daniel said. He did not know it yet, but his answer would change everything. An alert came through at that exact moment. A distress signal from a human colony called New Haven. The signal was weak and broken, but the message was clear. Raiders were attacking. They needed help immediately. The Galactic Council denied the request for aid. Daniel knew they would. He looked at Lisa. Then we will go ourselves. Lisa nodded once. She had known him long enough to understand what that decision would cost. But she also knew that some things mattered more than the rules. Some things mattered more than survival. They had 6 hours to get to New Haven before the raiders would finish their attack. 6 hours to prove that human courage meant something, even in a galaxy that did not believe in them. The alarm on Kepler 442b screamed through the colony of New Haven. It was a sound that meant death was coming from the sky. Dr. Anthony Walsh was in the hydroponics bay when the sirens started. He was checking the water systems. The plants around him grew in perfect rows. Tomatoes, beans, wheat, everything they needed to survive on a world that did not want to feed them. He had spent 5 years building this bay. He had spent 5 years turning rock and dirt into soil that could grow food. Now it was all about to burn. He moved quickly through the corridors. Other people were running too. Some were crying. Some were trying to be brave for their children. Anthony did not think about what was happening above them. He thought only about the sleep room on level 3. 2 children slept there. Marcus was 10 years old. Sophia was 7. They had come from the failed colony on Terra Nova. Their parents had died when that colony fell. Anthony had taken them in. They were his responsibility now. He found them waking up as he entered the room. Marcus was already sitting up. The boy was smart and quick. Sophia was rubbing her eyes. She did not understand yet what the alarm meant. "We have to go," Anthony said. He tried to keep his voice calm. "Right now. Take my hand." They moved through the corridors toward the underground bunker. The bunker was 3 levels down. It had been built into the bedrock of Kepler-4, 42b. It was meant to be a shelter if the weather on the planet became dangerous. They had never expected to use it to hide from raiders. The bunker was already filling with people. Women and children. Some men, too. Anthony did not see Captain Nathan Price. The captain would be in the command center. He would be trying to organize a defense. Captain Price was a former soldier from Earth. He had come to the colonies because Earth had no more room for soldiers. The wars had ended, and he had become an administrator. He did not want to be an administrator. He wanted to fight. On Kepler-4, 42b, he finally had a chance. Price stood in the command center and looked at his situation. It was bad. The colony had 300 people. Only 200 could fight. 50 of those were not trained. He had weapons, but not many. He had defenses, but they were weak. He had no air support. He had no heavy weapons. He had something else, though. He had people who would not give up. The raider ships appeared on the screens. There were 5 of them. They were fast and dangerous. The raiders had attacked human colonies before. They had destroyed ships and taken what they wanted. They moved like predators that had never learned to fear anything. "They're coming in hot," one of Price's officers said. The officer's name was Jackson. He was young and scared, but he was trying not to show it. "Sound the alarm for all defensive positions," Price ordered. "Get the civilians to the bunker now. I want every able body to man the walls." The colony of New Haven had been built to last. The main dome covered the center. The residential areas stretched around it. The mining equipment was stored on the eastern side. Price had studied the layout 100 times. He had played through scenarios in his mind. None of them had expected the colony to win, but winning was not the only way to matter. The first raider ship landed near the western dome. Soldiers came out with weapons that glowed with dangerous light. They moved with confidence. They had done this before. They expected the humans to run or surrender. Surrender would be better for them. It would mean fewer casualties. What they found instead was resistance. 3 of Price's best fighters opened fire from the dome walls. The shots were not perfect. Raider armor was strong. But some of the raiders fell. The others did not hesitate. They charged forward. Captain Price coordinated from the command center. He had his team set traps using the colony's equipment. He had them create explosions from the agricultural chemicals. He had them turn mining drills into weapons. It was not elegant. It was not sophisticated. But it was all they had. The battle became a dance of survival. The raiders would push. The humans would fall back and lead them into the traps. Some humans died. Anthony Walsh did not know them, but he felt each death in his chest. Each one was a person who had come to Kepler-4 42b because they believed in building something new. In the bunker, Marcus helped carry ammunition. He was 10 years old and scared. Sophia was crying. Anthony had told Marcus to be brave for Sophia. The boy had nodded. He understood what was being asked of him. He was carrying heavy boxes up the narrow stairs. His hands were shaking, but he did not stop. "You are doing good," Anthony told him. "You are helping save people. Are we going to die?" Marcus asked. Anthony did not lie. "Maybe, but people are fighting to make sure we do not. We have to help them however we can." Price made a decision that would change the battle. The center of the colony could not be held. The raiders were too many. They had weapons that were too strong. But the caves beneath the colony were deep. The caves could be defended. Each passage was narrow. The raiders could not use their numbers there. Sound the retreat to the caves, Price ordered. Get everyone below. Keep them moving deeper. His last squad stayed in the center. Victoria Chun was in that squad. She was 23 years old. She had been a teacher on Earth. She had come to Kepler 442b to build schools and educate the next generation of humans on this world. She had never thought she would become a soldier, but when the alarm sounded and Captain Price asked for volunteers to stay behind, she had stepped forward. The last squad knew they would probably not make it out. They knew they were staying behind so others could escape. They knew they were walking into a fight they could not win. They stayed anyway. Price moved with them through the tunnels. He was their captain. He would not ask them to do something he would not do himself. They set charges at key points in the tunnel. They dug in at the narrowest passages. When the raiders come, Price said, we slow them down. That is all we need to do. Just slow them down until everyone is deep enough in the caves. The battle in the tunnels was brutal and close. The raiders could not spread out. They could not use their advantages in numbers or firepower. All of that meant nothing in the darkness below Kepler-442b. Victoria Chun did not think about dying. She thought about the children in the bunker. She thought about Marcus carrying ammunition. She thought about the schools she would have built. If this moment had not come, she fought because the people next to her were fighting. She stayed because others were staying. She refused to break because everyone around her refused to break. The raiders pushed deeper, but slowly. Hour after hour, they pushed. The humans fell back. But they did not run. They did not scatter. They held the line, and then they moved the line deeper. After 8 hours, the raiders stopped coming. They had lost too many soldiers. They had expected an easy victory. They were not prepared for a people who would fight even when winning seemed impossible. The colony was badly hurt. 18 humans were dead. 43 more were wounded. The main dome was damaged. The hydroponics bay was burning. The homes where people had dreamed of building a future were now ruins, but the colony still stood. The people were alive. And the raiders were leaving Dot in the bunker. Marcus held Sophia while she cried. Anthony Walsh was treating the wounded. Captain Price was checking every name on his list. He wanted to make sure no one had been left behind. No one was forgotten. That night, as the fires burned low, the people of New Haven realized something. They had been told they were weak. They had been told they should accept help and protection. But when the moment came, they had stood alone. They had fought with whatever they had. And they had survived. Courage, they learned, was not about having the best weapons or the strongest bodies. Courage was about standing when running would have been easier. Courage was about fighting for the people next to you, even when the odds were impossible. They did not know it yet, but the galaxy was watching. And everything was about to change. Commander Daniel Torres had pushed the diplomatic vessel beyond its safe limits. The engine screamed in protest as he drove it toward Kepler 442b. He had broken 3 protocols getting this far. He had called in favors from people who would now be angry with him. He had risked his career and his life. None of it mattered if he arrived too late. The colony appeared on the sensors, like a dying thing. Smoke rose from the surface. Buildings were burning. The orbital system showed damage everywhere. For a terrible moment, Daniel thought they had not made it in time. He thought the colony was already dead. Then he saw movement on the ground. People. There were still people alive down there. He brought the ship down carefully. The landing thrusters kicked up dust. The colony of New Haven appeared before him like a scar on the landscape. It was broken and bleeding, but it was still here. Daniel and his team left the ship with medical supplies and whatever weapons they had. As they moved through the settlement, they saw things that made them understand the battle that had happened here. The main dome was open to the sky now. Wind moved through the broken sections. Bodies of raiders lay in the streets. But there were human bodies, too. Not nearly as many, but each one hurt to see. They found Captain Nathan Price checking a list. He was moving slowly, like a man who had not slept in days. When he saw Daniel, his face changed. "Commander," Price said. "The Council denied the request for aid?" "Yes," Daniel said. "But I did not ask their permission to come anyway." Price smiled a tired smile. "Then I'm glad you are here." They moved through the colony together. Daniel saw the damage and understood the fight that had taken place. This was not just a battle. This was a people refusing to die. This was a colony saying they would rather stand than run. In the medical bay, Dr. Anthony Walsh was still working. He had blood on his clothes and exhaustion in his eyes. Around him were wounded from both sides. He was treating raider soldiers alongside human colonists. When Daniel asked why, Anthony did not even pause in his work. "They are wounded," Anthony said. "That makes them patients. I treat patients. It does not matter where they come from." Daniel found Victoria Chun helping to move equipment. Her arm was wrapped in bandages. When he asked about her injury, she looked at it like she was seeing it for the first time. "It happened in the tunnels," she said. "During the defense. It is not important. There are people who were hurt. Worse." Daniel realized something as he stood in the ruins of New Haven. He was looking at people who had been broken by their fight and were trying to help others instead of helping themselves. He was looking at a species that was willing to die for people they barely knew. The news of New Haven spread quickly through the galaxy. The Galactic Council networks carried the information. They broadcast images of the colony. They showed the defensive positions that had held against impossible odds. They showed the faces of humans who had fought knowing they might lose everything. The council members received the news in various ways. Some were shocked. Some were angry. Some were confused. They had judged humanity as weak and unimportant. Now, they had to face the fact that they had judged wrong. Verkesh, the Xylthian elder, watched the reports in silence. He had seen many battles in his 300 years. He had watched countless species fight and die. But he had never seen a battle quite like this. He had never seen a species fight with such desperation and such care for each other. Backstory named Colthan made a decision that would change everything. She requested a private audience with Commander Daniel Torres. The request was made quietly. No one on the council knew about it. It was just a traitor wanting to talk to a human commander. They met in a small room on the council station. Colthan's orange skin seemed to glow in the light. Her silver patterns moved like living things across her body. "I hired the raiders," she said without preamble. "The Xylthian Council asked me to find a way to test your species. They wanted to know if you were worth protection. I agreed. I knew the odds were bad for you. I thought it was just business." Daniel felt something cold move through his chest. "You wanted us to fail. I wanted to know the truth," Colthan said. "The council told me humans were weak. I hired raiders to see if that was true. What I did not expect was to learn that weak and strong are not simple words. Your people are not strong in the way the Xylthians are strong. You do not have power or ancient knowledge. But you are strong in a way that matters more." "And what way is that?" Daniel asked. "You are strong because you refuse to break," Colthan said. "You are strong because you fight for people you do not even know well. You are strong because a teacher becomes a soldier without hesitation. A scientist treats enemies in his medical bay. A boy of 10 years carries ammunition to help save his colony. That is strength. That is the kind of strength that builds civilizations." She gave Daniel access to the council records. She showed him the decision to test humanity. She showed him that the Xylthians had wanted to know if they should bother protecting a young species, or if they should just let the galaxy sort itself out. What will you do with this information? Colton asked. Daniel thought about Anthony Walsh treating wounded raiders. He thought about Marcus carrying ammunition. He thought about Victoria Chun fighting in the tunnels. I will tell the council that we are not asking for protection based on strength, he said. We are asking for it based on who we are. We are asking for it based on what we have already proven we are willing to do. The news of what Colton had done spread through the council chambers. Some members were angry. Some were embarrassed that they had not seen humanity's true strength themselves. Some realized that they had been wrong about what strength really meant. The Tory warrior Cathellen reviewed the battle footage. He watched Victoria Chun fight in the tunnels. He watched Captain Price coordinate the defense. He watched Dr. Anthony Walsh refuse to stop treating the wounded even as the colony burned around him. Cathellen requested a transfer. He wanted to work with humans. He wanted to understand how beings with weaker bodies and shorter lives could fight with such intensity that the Vex story announced. They would establish formal trade agreements with Earth. The Tory requested military cooperation protocols. Even the mysterious Kethri, who rarely involved themselves with young species, asked for a negotiation summit. The Xylthian Council remained silent. They did not change their vote. They did not admit they were wrong. But they did not oppose the actions of the other council members. They simply accepted that the universe had shown them something they did not expect. Daniel Torres stood in the medical bay of New Haven and looked at his people. They were wounded and tired. They had lost friends and homes. But they were still standing. What happens now? Lisa Mitchell asked. Daniel looked at the faces around him. He thought about Colfin's words. He thought about strength and what it really meant. Now, he said, we show the galaxy that humanity is worth fighting for. Now we show them that our strength is real. And we do it together with everyone willing to stand beside us. The first human military alliance with alien species was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Lisa Mitchell stood in the training facility on the neutral station above. Vex Prime. Around her were soldiers from 4 different species. Each one had volunteered to learn human military tactics. Each one had come because they wanted to understand what they had seen at New Haven. The Tory warrior, Cathellen, was here. He stood with his 4 arms crossed against his chest. Beside him were 3 other Tory soldiers. They had trained their entire lives for combat. They were faster than humans. They were stronger. They had weapons that humans could not match, but they could not beat New Haven's defenders in a simulation. Lisa had run the numbers. She had built the scenario. She had given the human defenders half the resources the raiders had. The humans still won. Cathellen wanted to know how. You forget something, Lisa told the assembled soldiers. You think war is about weapons and power. But war is also about will. War is about knowing why you are fighting. War is about standing when everything tells you to run. Dr. Elena Foster was the scientific advisor to the military program. She had come from Earth to help bridge the gap between human and alien military thinking. She was brilliant, and she asked difficult questions. Why would we fight at all if there is another way? She asked a Tory commander during one session. Her name was Kayla, and she had been a battle leader for 50 years. Kayla was shocked by the question. Because the enemy must be defeated. Because the mission requires it. Elena shook her head. But what if instead of defeating them, we understand them? What if we ask why they are fighting? What if there is a way to win that does not require death? Kayla had no answer. In her entire life, she had never asked that question. Victoria Chun was now a full military advisor. Her wounds had healed, and she had been promoted. She took the lessons from New Haven and taught them too. Aliens who had never needed to improvise with mining. equipment, and agricultural chemicals. You think small forces cannot win against large ones, she said during a training session. But that is wrong. Small forces can win if they know the ground, if they know what they are fighting for, if they do not believe they can lose. The HFY Story traders came to observe the training, but they stayed to learn. They had a different way of thinking about conflict. They wanted to know if a human approach could be profitable, if understanding the enemy could create business opportunities instead of bodies on the ground. Weeks turned into months. The training became harder. The soldiers began to understand each other. The Tory began to ask questions they had never asked before. The HFY Story began to see war not just as business, but as something that had meaning. Then something happened that none of them expected. A Tory named HFY was trapped during a training exercise. The training ground had a section that was designed to collapse. It was meant to teach soldiers how to escape from falling buildings. The collapse happened while HFY was still inside. The probability of survival was low. The structure was heavy. The Tory were tough, but not tough enough to survive tons of falling metal without help. Victoria Chun did not think. She ran into the collapsing structure. 2 human soldiers followed her. Then 2 more. Then a HFY Story trader named Rendak. Then Cathellan himself. They found HFY trapped under a metal beam. Together, they lifted it. Together, they pulled the Tory soldier out. When they reached open ground, the entire structure collapsed behind them. If they had waited 1 more second, they would all have died. Cathellan looked at the humans in the HFY Story, who had rushed into danger for a soldier they barely knew. He looked at Victoria Chun, whose hands were bleeding from the metal. "Why did you do that?" he asked. HFY is not human. The HFY Story trader is not human. Why would you risk your lives? Victoria did not have a fancy answer. Because he was trapped. Because we could help. It is that simple. The training program became something none of them had expected. It became not just a military alliance, but a friendship. The soldiers began to share their stories. The Tory talked about their honor codes. The HFY Story talked about their trading history. The humans talked about Earth and what they had left behind. Captain Lisa Mitchell and Cathellan became friends. They spent hours going over battle strategies. Cathellan wanted to know why humans were willing to die for people they did not have blood ties to. Lisa tried to explain it. Because we understand loss, she said. Because we are not very strong individually. Because we know that alone we will fail. Because we know that together we might succeed. Dr. Elena Foster worked with HFY Story scientists. They discussed ways to solve conflicts without fighting. They began to develop protocols for peace negotiations. They began to imagine a galaxy where war could be avoided. "Your species thinks too much," a HFY Story named Trax told her. "But your thinking is valuable. You ask questions we have never asked." Months of training became a solid alliance. The 4 species began to think of themselves not as separate military forces, but as a team. They began to name their units. They created traditions. When a soldier from one species was injured, soldiers from the other species would sit with them until they healed. They created a motto: "We stand together, or we fall apart." Commander Daniel Torres watched the training from the command center. He saw humans and aliens working side by side. He saw them laughing together after a training session. He saw them trusting each other with their lives. "This is what strength looks like," he said to Admiral James Hamilton, who had come from Earth to oversee the alliance. "They do not know what is coming," Hamilton said quietly. "No," Daniel agreed. "But they will be ready for it anyway. Because they have learned to stand together." The reports of the alliance worried the Xylthian military faction. There was a group of Xylthian generals who did not accept that humanity could be important. They did not accept that a young species could stand beside ancient ones as equals. They saw the growing alliance as a threat to Xylthian power. They began to plan in the training facility. The soldiers continued to work. They built trust with every exercise. They learned to depend on each other. They learned that strength was not about individual power. Strength was about standing with others and refusing to break. Victoria Chun taught a group of Vex Tori and Tori about human persistence. Caitlin taught humans and Vex Tori about honor in battle. Elena Foster taught all of them about communication and understanding. One night, as they sat together on the observation deck of the station, Caitlin made a statement that surprised everyone. "I came here thinking humans were weak," the Tory warrior said. "I came here to understand how you had won at New Haven. Now I know. You are not weak. You are strong in a way that my people forgot how to be. You remind us that strength is not just about power. Strength is about choosing to stand for others." The other soldiers nodded. They had all learned the same lesson in different ways, but in the corridors of Xylthian military command, plans were being made. Plans to stop the alliance. Plans to prove that the ancient powers of the galaxy could not be challenged by a young species and their desperate allies. The first moves would come soon. And this time, the test would be far greater than anything that had come before. The attack came without warning. 3 coordinated strikes hit at the same moment across the galaxy. The military training station was hit first. Then the Vex Prime capital world. Then human colonies on 3 different planets. The Xylthian military faction had decided that the alliance had to end at the training station. The siren screamed again. But this time the soldiers were ready. This time they were not untrained colonists running for caves. This time they were an army. Caitlin fought beside Lisa Mitchell. The Tory warrior moved like a force of nature. His weapons were powerful and his body was made for combat. But he stayed close to the human captain. When enemy fire came from the left, Lisa spotted it first. When the right flank was exposed, Caitlin covered it. They were not fighting as separate soldiers anymore. They were fighting as a unit. Victoria Chun coordinated evacuation efforts. Civilians had to be moved off the station. The battle would be fierce and terrible. Civilians could not be protected in a war like this. But when Victoria's transport reached capacity, she did not leave. She stayed behind to protect the people who had not made it to safety yet. 2 Vex Tori traders and a young Tory soldier named Rekos joined her. They took defensive positions in the station corridors and held the line while the last civilians escaped. Dr. Elena Foster worked in the medical bay. She treated wounded from 5 different species. Human soldiers lay on stretchers beside Tory warriors. Vex Tori traders waited for treatment next to young Xylthian soldiers who had turned against their own military. "This is madness," Elena said to her assistant. "They are from different worlds, different species. Why are they lying here together bleeding for each other?" "Because they learned what matters," her assistant answered. He was Vex Tori, and he was right. They had learned what the galaxy had forgotten. The battle raged on the station and on the worlds below. The human colonies on 3 planets faced coordinated attacks. But now they were not alone. Tory fighters came from the sky. Vex Tori ships provided cover. The colonies held. They survived. At Vex Prime, the capital world was surrounded by defensive shields. But the Xylthian attacks were relentless. The shields began to fail. Without reinforcement, the city would fall. Captain Nathan Price coordinated with the Vex Tori Defense Command. He was on a different world, but his voice came through the communication channels clear and strong. He had learned how to fight as part of a larger team. "Hold the eastern section," Price ordered. "The Tory reinforcements are coming. They are already in space. They will arrive in minutes." The Vex Tori soldiers held. The Tory came. The attack was pushed back, but the cost was high. The fighting was fierce. Many soldiers died. Humans in Tori and Vex Story, and even some brave Xyothians who refused to fight against the Alliance. The turning point came in the third day of the war. A young Xyothian commander named Valshara made a choice that would be remembered forever. Valshara had been raised in the Xyothian military tradition. She had been taught that her species was superior. She had been taught that other beings were less important. She had been taught that power was the only thing that mattered. But she had also been watching. She had been listening to the reports from the training station. She had seen how humans in Tori and Vex Story had learned to fight together. She had seen them die for each other. When the order came to attack the Alliance fleet, Valshara made her decision. She did not attack. Instead, she did something that the Xyothian military had never seen before. She gave the Alliance the encryption codes to the Xyothian fleet. She gave them the security information they needed to counter every attack. It was the greatest betrayal in Xyothian history. Valshara's own soldiers were shocked. Some tried to stop her. But other Xyothian soldiers, younger ones, who had also been watching the Alliance, joined her. They could not fight against their own military, but they could refuse to fight for them. Elena Foster was in a communication chamber when Valshara made first contact. The young Xyothian commander's face appeared on the screen. Her color had changed. Among her species, color change indicated deep emotion. Deep conviction. Why would you betray your own? Elena asked, confused and grateful at the same time. Valshara's translator worked hard to capture her meaning. I was wrong, the Xyothian said. My species told me that strength was about power, about weapons, about ancient knowledge. But I watched humans teach Tori about honor. I watched Vex Story and humans work together. I watched a teacher become a soldier without fear. I watched a scientist treat enemies with the same care as friends. That is true strength. I could not fight against that. I could not fight against what I now understand courage really means. With the encryption codes, the tide of the war turned immediately. The Xyothian fleet's attacks became predictable. The Alliance ships moved to counter each move. Within hours, the rogue Xyothian faction was defeated. The war was over. The casualty reports were terrible. Thousands were dead. Many of them had never wanted this war. Many of them had come from worlds that just wanted peace. But something important had happened. The galaxy had learned something it had forgotten. Strength was not about being the most powerful. Strength was about standing with others when it would have been easier to stand alone. Commander Daniel Torres gave his report to the reformed Galactic Council. This time, all members listened. Even Verkesh, the ancient Xyothian elder, sat quietly and listened to every word. Humanity requests full member status, Daniel said. His voice was clear and certain. We do not ask for it based on our weapons. We do not ask for it based on resources or technology. We ask for it because we have proven that we will stand with our allies. We ask for it because we will sacrifice for the innocent. We ask for it because we will never abandon those who stand beside us. The vote was called. The council members voted one by one. Even Verkesh voted yes. The approval was nearly unanimous. That night, a celebration began. It was not just human celebration. It was a celebration of all species that had fought together. Humans in Tori and Vex Story and even some brave Xyothians drank together. They told stories of the battle. They honored those who had died. Dr. Anthony Walsh found himself talking with Colton, the Vex Story trader. They were discussing plans for a joint research initiative. They wanted to grow food on every Vex Story world. They wanted to create agriculture that would help all species. Captain Lisa Mitchell shared training techniques with Kavelin and 5 other allied commanders. They were already planning the next phase of the alliance. They were building something that would last. Victoria Chun stood with Valshara, the young Xylphian commander. Two warriors from different worlds. Two soldiers who had learned that courage was not about the size of your military or the history of your civilization. "What will you do now?" Valshara asked. "I was a teacher before all of this," Victoria said. "I want to teach again. But this time, I want to teach Alliance soldiers how to fight together, how to respect each other, how to understand that our differences make us stronger." Valshara smiled. "Then I will teach with you." Captain Nathan Price stood with his team. He looked at the faces around him. He thought about the people who had died at New Haven. He thought about their courage. He thought about how that one moment had changed everything. "They gave us this," he said, more to himself than to anyone else. "They gave everyone this," Elena Foster said, hearing his words. She had joined the group. They showed the galaxy that a small group of people with nothing but will could matter. Commander Daniel Torres stood on the observation deck of the Council Station. He looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was New Haven. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there were the people who had started all of this. Lisa Mitchell came to stand beside him. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I am thinking about those first days," Daniel said. "When the Council told us we were weak. When they said we were not worth protecting. I am thinking about how a teacher became a soldier. How a scientist treated enemies. How a boy of 10 carried ammunition to save his colony. They showed us what strength really is," Lisa said. Daniel nodded. "And now the galaxy knows too." The stars shone above them. The galaxy was different now. It was not better because humans had come. It was better because humans had come and refused to be broken. It was better because they had shown everyone that true strength was not about the size of your fleet or the age of your civilization. True strength was about standing when standing might cost everything. It was about choosing mercy when you had the power to destroy. It was about fighting not for conquest, but for the right to call others family. In the darkness between worlds, humanity's promise echoed across the stars. "We will be here. We will stand beside you. And we will never let you face the darkness alone." That promise was humanity's greatest strength. And it would carry them forward into whatever future waited among the stars.